G'day folks, it's Jay here. Well, this is the little video I want to do on the oil pump. This is the, I've come across a little forum and I'll show you at the end of the video on how to race prep a V8 standard volume oil pump. They're not a bad pump in standard trim, but they're not really suitable for competition use. And I mean that in the sense of like a high rever and something that you're going to push that engine. Now, I did mention in that other video on a high volume oil pump. Well, yes, probably a good thing, but I think from what I've heard and from what I've read and learnt, that the trade-off is there's actually a lot of load on the gear, on this shaft that runs up onto the camshaft. And I think a high volume is a little bit longer in the gear. And what it does, obviously, is going to give you more volume. But at the trade-off is, off the shaft, it just loads it up too much. And I've heard a lot of failures. So what I'm trying to do here is show you is that you can improve a standard pump, volume pump, to perform as good, and if not better, than any sort of aftermarket pump that's out there. I recommend you start off with look, in my case I bought a brand new, and they're not that expensive, alloy bodied standard volume oil pump. Now, in the thread that he's put up, the idea of it is to get the flow. See, pressure is a restriction, and the trouble is it's reading off here, your pressure gauge, right? Now, for example, you've got 60 pound at 5,000 revs. It's all very well, but it's not, in my understanding, I may be wrong, but in my understanding, it's not a real good indicator of actually what's going into the block. By doing, in my view, doing these little tips and tricks, you can actually still maintain that oil pressure but increase the flow. And so you're sending more oil, more volume of oil to your engine. And I think that's the key to really getting these little pumps working really well, because out of manufacturing, everything's all sharp. Some of the holes don't line up perfect when they mate together, and especially on here on the engine block, when you mount this to the block of the engine, this is the intake. There's an actual this part here. If you look, I've actually ground it. The block is over this part here was over the covering a little bit of the hole of the. So there's a restriction there already before you even get it into the pump. It's struggling. So I'll just show you roughly what I've actually done to it, but that thread that I'm going to put up will really go into detail. So I've done a fair bit of research on it, and a lot of that guy, what he's put up's really made a lot of sense. So, and yeah, we'll start off, I've ground that back. So there's no restriction around from the engine block straight into the pump, okay? So oil enters into here, and the gears are running sort of that way, and it gets pumped back through to this way. Now what this hole is, this is the bypass valve, okay? So, and that runs in there, well, that actually taps in there nice and snug, and what that does, if the filter blocks up, this is a bypass, so it'll allow oil still to go into the engine in the case that you don't ever change your filter. So he recommends pulling that out and actually just putting in a 3/4 inch Welsh plug and just getting rid of that. Now, he's blended, he's told us how to blend it, so I've chamfered that over nicely, and that's the key to, I think, to a good pump, is to have all the orifices, the holes, everything mating nice rounded sort of corners for the oil to pass, and there's no real sharp edges. Now, once that's mated on here, as you can see, oil goes through here. And once again, it's been chamfered. I've chamfered it up. Okay? And it's just put a nice little radius around there. And that follows the path through to the outside of the filter. Okay? And once again, I've gone in there and, you know, they say to do some porting it and take all the sharp edges, blend it nicely. Don't have to take too much off it. And so it's all nicely rounded. And even there, he shows there, just a little radius there. Just take all them sharp burrs and edges off it. So when it goes into the filter, it's got a nice flow path. There's no lumps and bumps and restrictions. Then once it goes through the filter, it goes back down this way. Now what I've gone and done there is I've threaded this off. That's quite easy to do. You just put I'll show you. I just found a nut that fits in there like that, and because you can see right up in there, yeah, there's a slot there, so that comes off easy. And you can pull that out, and then once oil goes through the centre of the filter, it runs back down this way. And there's a few, I don't know if you can see it on the, I've done some porting down in there too. It's a bit tricky, but there was actually quite some casting marks and it was terrible down through there. So I've cleaned that up nicely. And then once it's run through that way, it comes back out under here. Right, now this again mates to the pump body, okay, like that. But the trouble is, when you mate them together, the holes don't line up. There's actually quite a step in it. So you have to match port them. So there's all these little things that impede on these pumps. But if you can address it, doesn't take much, you can really get them flowing nice. Okay? Then, once it comes through that hole, once again, you radius that corner, and this area here feeds back to the engine. So if you can just get the pathways of all the little galleries in this pump flowing nice and nothing restricting one another, you'll get it flowing really well and delivering oil to the engine. Now the last little trick he does is to lift oil pressure overall. This is the relief spring setup. There's a little piston inside which is still in there. I'm not sure if I can even get it out. No, it's still in there. No. But anyway, there's a little piston in there, and that sits on the spring, sits on it, and that's the little bung to that screws in. And what he does is he machines up a little packer. Now he reckons around 100 thousandths of an inch, right? And what that does, that'll put a bit more pressure on the spring, and it increases overall oil pressure. He said you can get it up to around 70 to 75 pound in the top end of your engine revs before it releases. So that's another little thing I've got to do, is just make up a little packer, about 100 thousandths, no more. Some people say 60 to 100. And that'll lift the oil pressure a little bit in the top end. So by doing these little mods, you're not putting any more load on the drive shaft of the oil pump like a high volume does, but you'll get the flow. And that's a great thing in my book. So I'll put a little video up when it's all up and running, and we'll have a talk then. So I'll show you the thread on that if anyone's interested, because it's wasn't my idea. But saying that, I'm just showing you. This is basically who it was. If you type in performance forums, how to prep a Holden V8 oil pump for competition use, and it shows you everything. It's got all the pictures, diagrams on where to grind, what to do, the procedure on everything. And yeah, if you follow that step by step, you can't go wrong. guys. So that's my little tip. I'll catch you later.